Salut, soyez bienvenue. Welcome to another video with moi, Mme Hoy. As always, stop the video, pause the video, go backwards to catch anything that you've missed, because I will go pretty quickly. So if it's just review, you're great. If you're learning this for the first time, that going backwards and pausing and re-listening will be very helpful. If you have any questions, though, of course, at the end, you're welcome to leave a message. So, soyez bienvenue à vidéo de être. Être means to be. We'll cover prononciation, conjugation, and when to use it versus not use it. And we'll start off with pronunciation.
Pronunciation can be simple. If you like tunes, here's a petite chanson from my tone deaf self. Je suis, tu es, il est, nous sommes, vous êtes, ils sont. Je suis, tu es, il est, nous sommes, vous êtes, ils sont. So that's pronunciation in general, but I'm going to teach you a couple tricks about conjugating. And conjugating is basically knowing what your subject is and making that verb match that subject. So if I want to talk about myself, I'm in first person and I'm singular, I, and then I will choose that conjugation. And notice how there's a category for second person singular and plural, or just singular formal. I and other people, he, she, or one, or they. So let's take a look at some tricks about learning that spelling, or basically that conjugation. Je suis, you, I, makes a we sound. So that's where we get that we sound. And we don't pronounce the final consonants of most of our verbs unless they're followed by an E. So je suis, we don't pronounce the S. And there's an I in here, and it means I am. So hopefully that will help remembering there's an I in there. Let's talk about tu es, singular. Normally we don't pronounce the final consonant here, but there's only two letters. So this is going to be one of those weird instances where we do need to pronounce it as A. Like, hey, what you doing? Bon, il, elle, or un. He, she, or one. One meaning we, or one as in, one doesn't add honey to your tea. I don't know. Something like that. And it is spelled differently than tu es, but it is pronounced exactly the same. Il est, elle est, on est. But let's talk about we. Nous sommes. Just like we don't pronounce the final S in nous or vous, we don't pronounce the final S in some. And we're going to see, though, that there's a lot of S's on the end of the we conjugation forms of the verbs. There's normally O and S, which you'll see later, but there is an S. So knowing there's an S here will be helpful. Bon, vous êtes. Vous êtes is very interesting because it sounds just like these first two letters. Because in this case, we don't pronounce the ES. It's a little bit of a longer word, so we don't pronounce that final S, and E sounds can be dropped. So if you can remember that, it sounds just like the beginning of être. You just take off the re. But spelling, we need those first two letters of être and this whole verb here. And we combine it and we have vous êtes. Il or elle. Notice il, elle, plural sound just like il et elle, which is why the verb's going to look a lot different. It's sont. We don't pronounce the final T. And N's and M's commonly make the vowel in front of it nasalized. If there's no E following it. So some has two M's and an E. It's not going to make the O nasalized. But here, the O is going to be nasalized. And when that happens, the actual N or M is not pronounced. So it's saw. Okay, so normally when we use the verb, we're using it in a sentence. So and sentences normally have the subject, the verb, and the object. So here, because it's the verb être, it's often going to be an adjective. So let's take a look at some of these sentences with these adjectives and notice how our verbs are still agreeing with our subjects. We're matching them, we're conjugating them. But our adjectives will have to agree with those subjects. So because I'm a female, je suis gentille, and it's made feminine. We know that the tu here is masculine because intelligent does not have an E, which is the common way of making an adjective feminine. Bon. So let's talk about some common errors that I see often because we want to avoid those. And the reason why they're common is because we have what are called idiomatic expressions, and different ones in different languages will require different verbs. So for example, how are you? In English, we say, how are you? We use the verb to be, which is are. But in French, we're going to need a different verb because if we just directly translate how are you, it means what are you like. So we're asking for details about tall, big, small, and then boring, funny, lazy, so those kinds of things. If we want to say how are you, we have to actually say how are you going. So that would be this verb aller, to go, and conjugated, it's going to be va or ve. So ça va means how's it going? But again, comment est with the verb être, right? And any pronoun means what is this, or person. It means what is that, what are they like? And we're asking for more details. Another common error I see is age. In French, we need the verb avoir to say age. Otherwise, we're the number itself. So, j'ai 37 ans. Hot and cold, it can lead to some bad things. Just remember to say hot and cold. Like I'm hot or I'm cold. I have to use, again, this verb avoir, which means to have. Donc, j'ai chaud, j'ai froid. But if I want to say it's hot or cold outside, I'm going to have to use faire. So, il fait froid, il fait chaud. To say right or wrong, if I use the verb être, like je suis, I'm correctness itself. But if I use the verb avoir, j'ai raison. And I love this expression, and you'll hear it. Même quand j'ai tort, j'ai quand même raison. It's adorable and funny. Hunger and thirst, similarly, again, we're having used the verb avoir. Do you see this pattern? Donc, j'ai faim, j'ai soif. To be afraid, you can say je suis effrayé. That works. But you're often going to hear this very common idiomatic expression of having fear. J'ai peur. J'ai peur. Tu n'as pas peur? Tired, similarly, you can say je suis fatigué. That's very common. But avoir sommeil is this idiomatic expression you're going to see over and over again. Donc, j'ai sommeil, tu n'as pas sommeil. There's a wonderful song by Stromae, and it's tu n'as pas sommeil. It's wonderful. If you have a chance, listen to it. You'll see that. It's beautiful. Idiomatic expressions. So there are idiomatic expressions with être. So, comment est, which we talked about. What are they like? Comment est ta nouvelle petite amie? Comment est ton nouveau petit ami? Also, être à quelqu'un. So, c'est à lui de sortir la poubelle. It's his job, basically. So, if you say to be at someone of, it's their job. C'est à moi de faire tout ce qui reste. Être à, and then whatever pronoun, like he, she, it means his. Or à moi, mine. So we discussed pronunciation, conjugation, how to use it correctly in sentences. I appreciate your time, and I have one little bonus if you want to keep listening. So we talked about how ça va means how's it going, and that's the verb aller. The verb aller in the future is ça ira, meaning, it will be fine. You'll see. It'll be just fine. But we can use the verb être in the passé composé, this is the composed past, to ask how was it? Ça a été? Ça a été comment? How was it? Did you enjoy it? Which is really fun. Again, if you have any questions, laisse-moi savoir. Et à tout à l'heure.